how long before Davante Adams calls it quits and asks out of Las Vegas? Now, this has been a rumor circulating the NFL world for the past few months now. And ever since the Las Vegas Raiders and Davante Adams came to an agreement of a 5-year, $140 million contract, things haven't worked out for either side. I mean, I want to say this deal came together March 18th, 2022, following a trade from the Packers. And if you kind of just look at what's happened to Davante Adams and to the team in general, things just haven't looked great. And clearly, Davante Adams doesn't like the situation he's currently in. How do I know this? Because he's expressed this opinion several times throughout the season, and we're not even halfway done with it. The first time came after a Sunday night loss early in the season to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Raiders, I want to say, they ended up losing the game 23-18. And the issue he had wasn't about his usage, because he kind of balled out in this game. He had 13 receptions, 172 yards. He played very well, especially with the tools he's being given. I mean, it's not like he has generational talent under center throwing the ball to him. And we'll talk more about the QB situation later on in this video, but for right now, I want to stick to the comments he had to say after the Pittsburgh loss. I'm sure his direct quote was, "It's not supposed to just be a week of talking about shit. We've got to go out there and do it." That's the theme of this year, doing it. Not just talking about it and figuring it out what we need to do. We did all of that last year. This year, you know, basically it has to be different, because last year was no good at all. I mean, the QB lost his job because of how bad last year was. And I think most people understand what he's getting at here. Basically, he's tired of the team underperforming when it matters, and this team constantly losing. He's a natural-born competitor. This man does not ever want to lose, as I'm sure most superstars in the NFL are. I mean, just last season, it was his first year with Las Vegas. He was hoping to find success in a new home, especially since he had spent his entire career in Green Bay up to that point. So he hoped that, you know, even though he was leaving a superstar in Aaron Rodgers, that reuniting with his college QB would be fun, right? Now, as cool as the idea of reuniting with your college buddy in the pros may have sounded, the results were underwhelming, to put it lightly. You see, the Raiders would go on to finish the 2022 campaign 6-11, third place in the division, and their starting quarterback would not be playing games at the end of the season. And it wasn't because he was injured, but because the front office and Derek Carr had a ugly relationship by the end of it. And if you remember, Derek Carr was one of the big factors for Davante Adams' decision to come to Las Vegas. Not saying he had all the options in the world, but a big reason was because Derek Carr was playing there. And now Derek Carr is out of town, and Jimmy Garoppolo is his replacement. And while some might say it was a lateral movement, I'm gonna be real, this might have just set the franchise back a little bit, because they didn't have a top pick to draft a QB. So what do? They get Jimmy Garoppolo to kind of plug him in place there, and the team is stuck in this kind of middle ground area, where they're trying to contend, but they're clearly not good enough to win a Super Bowl, and they're also not bad enough to get a top pick. And sure, the same sentiment can be made for about half the other teams in the league right now, but when it comes down to the Las Vegas Raiders, the future isn't looking the brightest. And with every week that passes, a rebuild just seems like a more realistic option. I mean, take a look at Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels is in the second year of his tenure in Las Vegas, and if the team decides to pull the plug on the season right now and basically tank, throw everything away at the trade deadline, then maybe I could see him honestly keeping his job heading into next year. Not saying that Las Vegas will do this, but that it's an idea that they should seriously consider, especially when Jimmy Garoppolo is your quarterback. I mean, he is a very injury-prone man. Just ask the San Francisco 49ers. It was one of the big reasons he lost his job there in the first place. He just couldn't stay healthy. Sure, he played very well in a very good system, but he was almost never on the field consistently. And we're seeing that same issue arise in his first year in Vegas. In fact, the Raiders lost a few easy games because Garoppolo wasn't there. For example, just a week ago in Chicago, had Jimmy Garoppolo been the quarterback, they probably could have taken care of business and won that game. because the Bears had a D2 quarterback in Tyson Bagent starting for them. And yeah, the defense was going to get run over no matter what, but Garoppolo would have put up an even closer fight than Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell. So, you know, Garoppolo, honestly, I could see the Raiders winning that game just a week ago had he been there, and then maybe the season's looking a bit different for the Raiders in general. Now, I don't want to continue the video without mentioning the comments he made after a victory versus the New England Patriots, because I feel like it's a pretty big deal in all of this. He would go on to say, "I'm sure people are thinking they won the game. Why is there an issue? I mean, you see why it's an issue. Y'all should know who I am. I know what I'm about at this point. When you're a player like me, mentally, my benchmark is not wins and losses, it's greatness." Talk about a team player, right? Anyway, what he's getting at is the fact that he's upset he's not being involved in the offense the way he thinks he should be. And to put things into perspective for you, these comments are coming off of a 2-week stretch in which Davante Adams had a total of 6 receptions, which is kind of wild considering he is the biggest weapon in this offense, especially with the way Josh Jacobs is just consistently underperformed week by week. Talk about a bust, right? But that's not who we're here to talk about. Davante Adams was severely underutilized, very clearly, in the Green Bay and Patriots game. Like I said, only 6 receptions. And the crazy part about it is Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback for those games. So it's not like the backup is under center, struggling to get this offense rolling. No, this is Jimmy Garoppolo, the man who's paid to be a starter for the team, not finding a way to connect with Davante Adams. Now, they have connected in the season, don't get me wrong. I mean, Pittsburgh was a very good week for those guys because Davante Adams, not only did he have 13 receptions in that loss, but he also had 20 targets. But besides that game, he hasn't really seen that much love, especially from Jimmy Garoppolo the entire season. And don't worry, okay? I'm aware that chemistry doesn't just happen overnight. I mean, let's be real. These guys have only had 5 games together. That's it. Maybe the solution here between Jimmy Garoppolo and Davante Adams is time. And maybe Davante Adams is trying to speed that up by expressing his frustrations publicly. You know, maybe trying to tell Jimmy Garoppolo, even though I'm sure they've had a conversation privately, that, come on, man, let's really figure this out. Because if things don't start clicking soon, they might need to start packing their bags. Which brings me to my next point. And that is that the NFL trade deadline is right around the corner. And I understand usually NFL teams don't tend to trade, especially in the regular season. At the deadline, it's not like basketball or like baseball, but recent history has proven otherwise. Hell, let's just take a look at last year's trade deadline where some of the biggest deals took place. Some of the contenders thought they would make moves that would get them closer to a Super Bowl ring. And for the most part, a lot of these trades ended up working out for the player and the team. I'm talking Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco, Bradley Chubb in Miami, Roquan Smith in Baltimore, and I guess TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota, where currently 3 out of those 4 teams are at the top of the NFL right now. So who's to say a team doesn't make a move for Davante Adams this season? Anyway, that's about it for the video. All I really wanted to cover. The trade deadline is probably happening as this video is being released. So, you know, Davante Adams gets traded. Just, you know, I told you so. Catch y'all later. Much love. See you in the offseason when he probably will get moved.